Okay, 2.1. 2.1 call to order. I will call the Paris Union High School District Special Board Meeting to order at 3 p.m. And now I'll do a roll call. See if we establish a quorum. Trustee Anaya?
Here.
Thank you. Trustee Stafford is absent. Trustee Hall? Here. Thank you. Trustee Garcia?
Here.
And Trustee Campos here, so we have established a quorum. 3.1, invitation to address the Board of Trustees on agendized items. Are there any public comments?
No public comments.
Thank you, ma'am. 4.1, study session. The Board of Trustees will hold a study session to review and discuss the purpose and key components of the local control and accountability plan. And Lindsay Chavez will do a presentation. Thank you, Lindsay. And welcome.
Good afternoon, Trustee Cabinet and Dr. Raux and President Campos, Trustees Garcia, Hall, and Trustee Anaya. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be here with you today. I am really excited, and I have to say that I'm also a little bit nervous because this LCAP document is so important, and I'm so excited about this opportunity to collaborate with you and to develop this partnership in working together to develop an LCAP that really is meeting the needs of our students and also reflecting the beliefs and the values of our community. I do, because I am a teacher at heart, I did provide you with some material. So you have a folder, and it should say LCAP Annual Update, and then you also have a little brown envelope. And in there are some writing materials, a marker, highlighter, pens, Post-it notes. I'm gonna engage you in some Wicker Avid strategies here today. One thing that I find really funny is that the California Department of Education thinks that this LCAP document is public friendly. But if you take a look at it, it's really difficult to read. And it's even more difficult to write. And so in your folder, I'm going to walk you through it, but we are going to talk about it throughout the day. When you first open it, you're going to find an LCAP infographic that has a summary of the entire LCAP. So it kind of talks about, the first page is our demographics. It has our vision and mission statement of our school district. It has, our breakdown of our students, but also a breakdown by needs. So you'll see the breakdown of our socioeconomically disadvantaged students, our students with disabilities, our English learners, our foster youth, and our homeless youth, but also some exciting things that we're really proud of in our district, particularly our robust CTE programs at all of our school sites, our robust AVID programs at all of our school sites, just some things that we're really excited about. As you go through that infographic, you're going to find just a highlight of our goals and a brief summary of the goals. So again, those few pages in the front is a summary of what you're going to find throughout the rest of that document, that LCAP that we publish every single year, okay? Now, if you turn to the next tab, I added some more information there that is beyond the LCAP, and that's a categoricals and grant overview. You're going to see some information on the different sources of funding that we also receive, and I'll be talking about that in my presentation today, okay? Just to walk you through, you're going to see special programs and activities by school site, all the different things that we have at our schools, such as AVID or CTE pathways, robotics, but also to help you further your understanding, it shows how we fund those things at the school sites, all right? And then there's also some information for the different categorical programs, how much the allocations are, the descriptions, what we use the funds for, and what are the allowable usages of those funds, all right? And I share all this with you because I need a favor from you. Throughout the time that I'm going to be working with you in this capacity, I need you to hold me accountable, and I need you to ask me questions, all right? And throughout this time, when I update you on our LCAP moving forward, I'm going to need you to ask me, okay, Lindsay, you're spending a lot of money on that. Who are we helping? Right. And how are we going to know that it's helping them? And what are you going to do about it if it's not helping them? These are things that I need you to keep me on my toes and make sure that you're keeping me accountable throughout the year. Okay?
We could do that.
Yes, perfect. That's all I need. Alrighty. So we're going to go ahead and get on to the rest of the presentation, if that's okay.
Thank you.
So today, we're going to discuss, I forgot, I'm doing my computer, but also, there we go. We're gonna do just a really brief overview of what is the LCAP. What are the dashboard highlights and the progress? What are some of our challenges and ongoing needs? Then we're gonna talk about the budget, the alignment. We're gonna talk about transparency moving forward. I'm gonna give you a little overview of those categoricals and the grant funding. We're gonna talk about how we're gonna continue to engage our educational partners and our stakeholder groups. We're gonna talk about what's to come in year 2 of the LCAP. And also, I'm gonna give you some responsibilities and jobs also, okay? And then we'll have an opportunity for question and answer. Now, in your little packet, you have Post-it notes, you have pins, highlighters. I invite you, this is a living, breathing document, your folder is. I invite you to mark it up. I invite you to highlight and underline and jot down some things on the Post-it note that you maybe wanna ask me, just in case you forget, or anything that you wanna flag in your folder, things that you want to save for the next update, to make sure that I've done the things I promised you, and so I invite you to go ahead and interact with the material and the information that I'm providing you today. Okay. Alrighty, here we go. So let's talk about what is LCAP. Now, as you've probably noticed, we live in a world of acronyms in education. One of the resources that you have in your folder is a list of all the different acronyms. LCAP is one of those. LCAP stands for Local Control Accountability Plan. All right? And the purpose of the LCAP is to really ensure that it reflects our district priorities, it supports our continuous improvement goals, and it ensures that all of our students have access to reach their greatest level of success. The LCAP is a 3-year strategic plan. So this LCAP document that you have in front of you today, we are just concluding the first year, all right? So it's years 24 through 27. And so we just finished the first year. I'm gonna be giving you the annual update today, and then we're gonna be entering into the second year of the LCAP. Now, the LCAP is developed collaboratively by seeking input from our community partners, including yourself, our cabinet, our staff, our students, our families, and any of our community partners, all right? And as I said before, it is a 3-year plan. We develop goals, then we can implement them and monitor them over the span of 3 years. So essentially, we're given 3 years to make improvements and to support student achievement. At the end of 3 years, the Department of Ed is gonna say, how'd you do? And we get to let them know, okay, this is what worked well, these are some ongoing challenges we have, and this is what we're going to do moving forward. All right. I wanted to remind us today of the vision and mission of the Paris Union High School District, which is right here. I won't read it to you, but where this comes to play with the LCAP is that the LCAP is not just a compliance document. It brings this vision and mission to life. So when we talk about how we're going to provide a safe and caring environment, that becomes LCAP Goal 3, student well-being, right? And when Mr. Garcia, when you're talking about providing additional security and support, and that's one of the board priorities, we get to write that into LCAP as one of the action items. And then we get to assign funding to it and actually make it happen. We get to make it a reality.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Additionally, I'm moving through things here. So these are our superintendent's pillars, our district priorities. And as you know, these were developed as we were, during the search for our superintendent. And so this is what's really important for our cabinet. Now, I do want to remind you that these were developed after this current LCAP that you have now was approved. And so some things align, some things don't. And our job now moving forward is to make sure that we're aligning to our superintendents and our district priorities. Okay, so just a couple more things about the LCAP. The LCAP shapes our vision. It shapes our mission. It makes it a reality. It operationalizes equitable access for all of our students. We talk about all of our students, no matter what demographic, no matter where they come from, who they are, what background they have. We want to make sure that they have opportunities to succeed the same as all of our other students. And so the LCAP makes that happen. Now, there are 4 guiding principles, and I need you to hold us accountable for this, all of us in this room, all right? In the LCAP, when we're writing actions and we're spending our money, I need you to ask us, is this what's best for our kids? Is it aligned to the district priorities? Is it compliant with the state requirements? Are we fostering public trust? Because these are public funds that we're using. So we have a duty of stewardship. We have to make sure that we are responsible and that we're spending this money in a way where we're really targeting and we're intentional in supporting our students, because that's what we're here for. Alrighty, so this is just a really, really quick overview of the LCFF, the local control funding formula, and how school budgets are created, right? And so there's a per student base grant, which is ADA and COLA. Candace, please correct me if I'm wrong. And then we add a grade span adjustment. So based on, we're a high school district, so it's 9 through 12. We get a grade span adjustment for that, and also for our middle school. And then we get add-on adjustments based on we call it our unduplicated pupil percentage. And that's the number of our students who are English learners, who are foster youth, and who are low socioeconomic. All right? Now, that funding, the add-on adjustment, that's where the LCAP comes into play, because that funding is specifically for increased or improved services. It's not for the base. It's specifically targeted for the students that need the little extra support, all right? And that's really what we have to write into our LCAP, is how are we going to support the students who historically don't perform or aren't as successful as some other students. Now, the LCAP, it is a requirement. It has to demonstrate how we are increasing or improving services. It's actually one of the sections in the LCAP itself, and it's one of the tabs in your report there, all right? We have to highlight and we have to have actions that specifically say how we're going to increase or improve services for those student demographics that you look in the dashboard and they're performing in the red or in the orange. Okay. Oh, and if we're not doing it, then the CDE says, why are we giving you all this money? We're going to take that back if you're not using it.
Right.
And we don't want to give any money back. All right. So beyond the LCFF, we also have categorical and grant funding. So we receive additional funding. Now this is usually it's targeted for our students who are failing or at risk of failing. So with our categorical programs, we have our Title funding. The Title I, you hear us talk about that a lot. Title II, Title III, and Title IV, right? Title III specifically is for English learners. Title IV is student support and activities after school. And then we get special grant funding, and that's like the arts and music block grant that we receive. Our CTIG funds that support career technical education. Our community schools grant. We have a new grant called the CYBHI capacity grant. Our learning recovery block grants, equity multipliers, and there's more, but these are the main ones. These are the biggest ones, and that's the information that I included in your packet today. Now, all of these different funding sources, they get braided together, right? We kind of put them all together to create this comprehensive plan of how we're going to support all of the students and all of our school sites, all right? So we have this comprehensive system of supports. We expand services beyond the core academics, and we improve outcomes for our high need and our underserved students, all right? Now, this allows us to fully implement the LCAP and to meet compliance across our different funding sources. Now, the money isn't free. It comes with strings. So when we get additional funding, like the categorical programs and our special grants, there are very strict compliance pieces to that. They tell us pretty much, we're going to give you this extra funds, these extra monies, but you're only allowed to use it for this. For instance, Title I, you're only allowed to use it for your students who are failing or at risk of failing. And then they want us to write a plan. How are you going to do that? What are the action items? How much are you going to allocate to your schools? How much are you going to spend on administrative costs? And we have to submit all of those reports every year to the Department of Ed. And if they see that we're out of compliance, there is a high risk that we may have to pay the money back, and we don't want to do that. And luckily, we have never had to do that in the Paris Union High School District, and we don't plan on that happening in the future. Okay. Do we have any questions? So I get really excited and passionate about this, so you're gonna have to stop me.
Do you know of any local schools that have had to pay it back and the reason why?
I do.
Recent ones?
I do. Unfortunately, there's a nearby school district that had to pay back a few $100,000 in Title I funding because they had paid for some field trips. While the field trips were educational, going to the zoo or taking trips to museums, it didn't specifically address how they were going to improve English and math outcomes for their students. And so they were found out of compliance and they had to pay back that money. And so we have to be really careful with that.
So in building this LCAP,
Yes.
who did you go to get your information? Because I see there's no principals here.
Okay. That is a great question. So as the LCAP is developed, we have a variety of stakeholders that we engage. And so we have our different parent organizations, our English Learner Advisory Committees, our African American Advisory Committees. We have our school site councils. Now, part of the LCAP and receiving Title I funding is that each of our school sites also have to create a plan. And that's called the school plan for, I'm saying that wrong. It's the SIPSA. School Plan for Student Achievement. So each school site has to also create goals that are aligned to the district LCAP goals. But it's specific to their school site only based on their data. And then they engage their school site council and their parent advisory committees as well. And so we receive feedback from them. Now, one of the things that we definitely need to improve upon that, this is my 8th week in this role. And so as I, continue working with the team and receive feedback from the different school sites and the different parent organizations, they want to be involved. Our families want more opportunities to engage, and they want more opportunities to provide input and feedback. Coming from the school site myself, I'm of the philosophy that anytime we have a conversation with a parent, anytime they call us with a concern, that is feedback.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a formal meeting like today.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a formal survey that we send out. Any conversation that we have with a family is feedback. And so when we're having football games and we have a table for our parents to win prizes, that's an opportunity for us to have a conversation with them and to receive information and feedback and input on our LCAP. And that's one thing that we hope to increase and improve is the way that we engage with our community partners.
So quick question just on that alone.
Yes.
Are we collecting data or it's just word of mouth?
Both.
Okay.
We do both, yeah.
Awesome.
And so one of the things that we have planned for next school year that Dr. Egan's and I have been discussing and working on is really creating a system on how we're going to collect that data. And when we're sending out surveys. Now, as a parent myself, from a different school district, we get bombarded with those surveys. And when I get an email or a text and it's like a 40-question survey, I don't want to do that. But if I get a text or an email and it's a 2-question survey, I can absolutely do that. That's easy, right? But also we have these opportunities where we meet with our chambers of commerce, we meet with our mayors, and our students are going to be the ones who are inheriting our community. And so we need to have that ongoing conversation with community members as well, whether or not they're parents in our district. And so we want to develop a system where we're also receiving information and input and feedback from our community partners.
Just for Mr. Hall, the principals were wrapping up graduation and
Right, I know they're
end of the
busy.
year, so they were not required to be here. That's the only reason they're not here today.
Okay. I just want to make sure they know what's going into this from their feedback.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because they're the ones that are running. They know
Absolutely.
what's going on in their city,
Yeah.
So.
I will say from the perspective of a former principal, 8 weeks removed, one of the things that principals don't receive a lot of professional development on is school funding and how to manage your budgets.
Right.
And that is a big part. When I was a high school principal, I had all these grand ideas for how to improve things at my school, things I wanted to implement, and then I realized, oh my, that costs a lot of money. And how do I know what money to use? How do I know to manage my budget? And that's actually what brought me here today, is that curiosity and wanting to know how to be a better school principal. And so another thing that we're planning in Ed Services is that ongoing support for our principals and professional development on how to manage their budget and how to understand their different funding sources, not just within the LCAP and their general budget, but also the categorical funding that they receive and the special grant funding that they receive. Some of our special grants are only awarded to specific schools, not all of our schools. And if it's only to a specific school, then there's specific compliance pieces that those principals need to be aware of, you know. And so when they're calling us and asking us, hey, I want to do this, can you fund this out of this? I want to be able to work with them, but also teach them, you have this funding source, this is what it's for, let's plan for that so that they can manage their budgets themselves. We have a lot of plans for next year. All right.
You know what? Right before we move on,
Yes.
couple thank yous and kudos. You did well say that the acronyms, these 3 pages of acronyms, that
3 pages.
that helps. Because every time you I was like, I saw one earlier, and I'm like, what's a CCI? And I was like, college and career, but I don't. And then I looked, and then I found this, and I'm like, oh, it's college and career indicator. Okay. So thank you for that. I mean, the way this is laid out, I really appreciate all the different groups.
Just say yes.
All the different groups kind of broken down, because I think that gives us an idea on how to target certain groups. You know, there are some things that when I look at this stuff, it's kind of like, whoa. For example, and I know sometimes our ELA and our math scores are not what we want them to be overall, but I always got to look at the positive, right? But the gains that we're making, you know, the almost 6 points in ELA and 12 points in math is good. You know, obviously, I think our goal is to always to continue to improve, not go backwards, not be stagnant. So when we're looking at these goals, and that's, I guess, what kind of, for us, if, you know, whatever input we may have or feedback, you know, I look at goal 2, and it says our graduation rate is looking good. You know, our gains in African American is great. The college and career, they're prepared, but then we also, and they're, the African American subgroup right there is also doing well. But then you flip over on the chronic absenteeism, and it's kind of like our African American is 50%.
Yes.
So what that tells me is it's probably a small group that we have to target.
Yes.
Because if we're making all these gains, positive gains in real important areas, but there's other areas, then it seems like we can zero in, figure out a plan to target those specific populations. This one just stuck out because they were all in the little dashboard highlights.
Yes.
And so I'm hoping that, and I don't know, and I guess this is a tough question, and my overall question, like what's out of all the goals, I mean, I know that the ultimate goal is 1, but usually you can't get to 1 unless you are really engaged in, I mean, all of them are important, but the community family engagement piece, and then the safety and security, you know what I mean, supportive. And so, and I don't know how, you know, we spend money. I know later on I'm going to have my thoughts as to how we want to spend the money, because I think if we create the environment at our high schools, you know, with the principal, I think the principals are doing a great job, a lot of energy. They're trying to do the best they can to make sure that the kids are wanting to come to school, that school is fun, it's relevant, and they're learning things. And you know, we all know that kids go usually for the social part of it. Not all, but you know, that's a big part of being a high school student, middle school student as well. So how do we, like, when this is all laid out and planned, how do you identify, like, what is Paris Union's, or are we taking it like, okay, we always want to hit on everything, but do we ever look at it like, are we going all in on one area? Because I think, you know, if we do the attendance and we get kids here, you know, when they're here, they're going to learn. You know what I mean? Some might learn more, some might learn less, but they're going to learn better than if they weren't at home, unless we have our cool online programs and they can learn at home. But like, how do we condense that to figure out like what is our? And I know that's kind of a loaded question, because it could also be, you know, one site might be a safety issue, security issue, and the other one maybe that's just not it. You know, maybe just the programs aren't as engaging. You know what I mean? The football team stinks. Or, who knows? I don't know what. So for me, I'm just like, okay, do we have an idea of like what might be, you know, the main driver in allocating these funds? And I also noticed that we're at 34 million this year. Was it like 37? Did we lose some funding? I thought it was 37 last year, but maybe I'm off in the numbers.
So when our demographics change, it affects our numbers.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there you go. Okay.
And remember sorry to interrupt,
It's
last
okay.
year, around at this time, we were still projecting to grow in enrollment, so
Yes.
with that projected growth would have been a higher number than we actually realized,
Yes.
that's why you see
Okay.
a difference there.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
But anyway, so I don't know if like there's one specific thing that we're looking at, like as a collective district group.
I thank you so much for that question, Mr. Campos, and that's such an amazing observation. And I think over the last few years, you know, since I returned to Parish Union High School District, our focus was really on goal 3, on that student well-being. And when we talk about the budget, we take a look at how much we've allocated. You can see that we have dedicated a lot, you know, under that goal, and building our wellness centers and building, you know, building our support staff, our wraparound services. And so we really have put some, you know, a lot of intentionality in really building that area. You know, your question is a loaded question because that's going to lead me to talk about a true MTSS, a multi-tiered system of support, which really is 3 areas. It's academic, behavior, and then the, you know, social emotional well-being. And we've put so much emphasis on the social emotional well-being, and we're seeing great gains and growths in that. It's time now, I think, to start focusing on the academic, and that's actually where Dr. Route's areas of focus are in terms of really building up, you know, a robust academic with the IGETC and partnerships with MSJC, and building upon our CTE programs and the different opportunities for our students in our online academy, and that's why we're doing that rebranding, so that we can start now shifting our focus to building our academics, you know, now that we've really established, you know, our student well-being. Now, that doesn't mean that now we're going to abandon the support. Luckily, we have an amazing team under, you know, Ms. Kokani's direction, and with Ms. Ruiz, our coordinator of mental health, and they've been able to acquire some special grants to continue to support our well-being. So now we can free up some of those LCAP dollars and start placing them in our other priority areas.
Thank you.
So in this slide, you can see the 5 goals. Now, our 5 goals, the headlines for the goals are going to remain. What's going to change whenever we have an LCAP cycle is the specifics, the description of that goal. But our LCAP goal 1 will always be our academic goal. That's always going to be improving academic achievement. Our goal 2 will always be our college and career goal. And then our goal 3 is our student well-being. And then community engagement is our goal 4. Now, we have a special goal here, and that's LCAP goal 5, which is the equity multiplier goal that only applies to 2 schools, and that applies to Paris Lake High School, and that applies to Scholar Plus, which will be the future Inland Online Academy. Now, the reason why we have a special goal for those 2 schools is because based on their dashboard, they were identified as needing additional support, meaning their students were struggling much more than the students in our other schools. Now, because of that, we were allocated special funds just for those 2 schools. And as a requirement for the compliance piece, because the money isn't free and there's strings tied to them, we have to have specific goals and actions that are just for those 2 schools. And that's going to support us in really developing and you know, bringing up the programs and improving upon the services we have now for Paris Lake, and also supporting our rebranding of the Inland Online Academy, and also making that a more robust system so that more of our students can access that educational opportunity. Now, when we're writing these goals, under each of the goals are specific action items. Those action items are very, very important because it's what helps us achieve that goal. Now, those action items have to be clear, and they have to be focused, and they have to be measurable. So every time we write an action item, we allocate money to that, right? And whenever there's money, we have to make sure that we're spending it appropriately. So every time we spend money on a certain action item, there are 4 things I want to know, and these are the questions I'm going to ask our school sites every time. I'm gonna ask, okay, you wanna spend money on that? What is the student demographic group that you're targeting? Question 1. Question 2, what is the need that you're trying to address? Question 3, how are you gonna monitor the progress? Question 4, how are you gonna know that it's successful? So before we're even gonna put money towards that, we wanna know those 4 themes. So if someone is saying, I need $20,000 to send this group of teachers to this professional development. Okay, what's the student need? Or which student demographic? Oh, it's our English learners. It's our English learner teachers. Okay, fantastic. What is the need that you're targeting? Well, it's a specific math conference. We need their math scores are really low. We need to help them. Fantastic. How are you going to measure the progress throughout? Well, we're going to measure the progress based on their DNF rates. We're going to take a look at their state test scores. We're going to take a look at their A through G. Okay, sounds great. How are we going to know it's successful in the end? Well, we're going to know it's successful because more of our students are going to be passing their math classes and more of them are going to be reclassifying. Okay, excellent. You have those 4 things? Fantastic. Yes, sir.
You keep mentioning rebranding. So this is obviously something that the board has given the district directives in rebranding. But one of the phases in rebranding is changing the mindset of our instructors.
Absolutely.
You know, so we talk about this quite frequently. It starts from the top down, right? You know, and some, depending on the subject, it's the other way around. But we need people to be engaged. Right now, you're speaking from the heart. The passion is showing. You know, you're willing to keep pushing and pushing to get your message across. And we're understanding everything because this is what we want.
Yes.
But how do we make sure our teachers have what they need? This is easy to address when we're talking about the students. But how do we know our teachers are as passionate as you are, willing to educate our students? This is the goal we're trying to get to. And rebranding, literally, we have to change everyone's mindset. So what are we going to do to get the teachers motivated, aside from having the administrators to inspire the teachers? Is there anything else we could look at? Do we have to offer more PD days? What do we need to do in that area to get to this goal?
That's such a hard question, and I wish there was a simple answer, but I think the best answer is a shared leadership model. You know, our teachers are so invested, and they, and they have so much care for their students, and involving them in these decisions and talking to them and seeking their input and guidance as well, and being included, I think that's gonna go a long way.
So we're talking about the start, and I love that you're open about it, and we're having these conversations because it's long overdue. But how do we keep them engaged? Mm-hmm. You know, I know we can't just throw money at it and expect the problem to be fixed. Mm-hmm. We have to educate our teachers as well. So when we talk about, you know, because you mentioned, you know, going to conferences, whatnot, we want a level of accountability. So when these directors, these administrators, teachers, you know, I know I'm missing one, I can't think of the top of my head. Counselors, but we want them to bring back and share that information. Yes. So that could, maybe we have a side conversation. I don't know if I'm going off, but we really want them engaged and teaching what they've learned from these conferences. I think that's the only way we're going to be successful. We went to an event recently and we were looking and we were like, we're behind in times. Yeah. Just to see these people engaged, they introduced one of the young ladies as the next president of the United States.
Oh my goodness.
How many principals do that in our district? I haven't heard any. That's inspiring though. Don't you think if you could reach out and touch one's child and get them motivated, how many more will get motivated and inspired? And who knows, maybe they will be the next president. That's what we want here in Paris. So I'm feeding off your vibes, and that's where we're trying to go. And it goes back to rebranding and changing the mindset of everybody. We want everyone passionate, everyone. So whatever we can do, let us know. Obviously, we have to keep going with this, but I just want to make sure we touched on that.
You know what? I want to kind of chime in on that. And I think in any relationship that you have, and obviously the larger the organization, you know, the little more difficult it is on the relationship. But like any relationship, it has to be like a mutual respect and support. Yeah. And I know for me as a teacher, nothing irritates me more than directors, anybody above who hasn't been in the classroom. And that's why I'm so glad that you're in your position, because you realize what's going on. But when we're being told how to do our jobs and what are the best practices, and it's kind of like, well, you know, why don't you come down and, you know, teach me all your theory, you know, and show it into practice. And so, but the greatest thing is when we get the support. You know, PLCs, I for the longest time thought they were the biggest joke on the planet, because it was always like, okay, so it's supposed to be a professional learning community, but now this is just our bosses telling us how to do our job, and at the heart of it, it's supposed to be teacher-driven, teacher-directed.
Yeah.
And then I did see the positivity of it when I saw it done properly. And I think, I think on what Trustee Garcia is saying, and I think what I would like to see is that we start from the ground up. Because we, as an organization, for things to come to our attention, there's a lot of layers, and there's a lot of dots that have to be connected. But if we're not taking care of the people on the ground and listening to them and supporting them with what they need, I know that I don't know what our teacher. I know every site's different. You get teacher budgets, and I can tell you at my old middle school, we used to get $75. And I thought that was kind of laughable. Oh, and they said, but we'll get your printing. We got your printing costs. And so for me as a PE teacher, I'd be like, okay, so $75, I got 200 and something students. Get, 50, 60 cents a student to spend for the year, which is kind of crazy. But so for me, what I would really like to see, and I think that's how it all starts, is we support from the ground up. If we support from the ground up, and if our teachers feel like they're supported and they have everything that they need, parents are going to be happy, students are going to be happy,
Right.
And then if they're communicating with the people above them, their directors, and everybody's kind of working from a bottom up as opposed to a top down. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that there's obviously leadership decisions that have to be made, and I understand the structure. But ultimately, it's we have to make sure that our sites are content and that they have the money. But I think you brought up a very important point. We can't just give money and just be like, hey, have a good time, and woo, we had a good time. Like, what was the result? Oh, we had a good time. There's nothing. We can't prove anything else besides a good time, which I think is extremely important. But I think we need to just make sure that there's a constant communication, from the board to the cabinet to the directors, to the site administrators, and then from there to the staff, the classified and certificated, because. If it's if there's holes, then I think you start to get breakdowns in the systems, and and every site's different. But for me, I really think we need to put a lot of our emphasis and effort in supporting the teachers down below and the site administrators, because they're the ones that are facing thousands of students every day. They have to make decisions. Obviously, they're prepared and planning. I usually don't worry about the instructional side, because I think we have a good staff that knows what they're doing, and we don't need to micromanage them. But we need to support them, because there's so many times they can say, what, we'd love to do this, we'd love to do that, and they have great ideas, but it's always we're limited on funding.
Yeah.
So I know for me, when I look at one of these categorical funds on this page in the arts and music, are we maxing out what we can spend on our Prop 28 money? I think those are the kind of things that we really need to look at and make sure, because that brings the creative side to education. The fun side. And a lot of times, education can sometimes be lacking in fun. It's not to say that we're taking away the rigor and all that, because we know we've got to do that. But at least it might be a little bit of a motivating factor to work towards that. In athletics, you have to at least be eligible.
Yeah.
At the very bare minimum, show up and be eligible. But then, once there's a spark and there's a connection and they have their groups, they found their little, identified teammates or whatever, then everything starts to kind of function. So, that's kind of my 2 cents. I know that was kind of lengthy and a lot. And the one question I did have on the multiplier.
Yes.
So I know that we're getting supplemental and concentration. We're actually getting more money on top of that because they're the third tier or whatever it is of support. Oh, wow. Okay.
Just specifically for
those two sites.
For those two schools
Right,
is
right,
who
okay.
was identified.
Okay, thank you, because in a recent conversation, we were wondering that and didn't know if that worked, and so that's good to hear, so thank you for validating that.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
I think as far as
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. As far as the equity multiplier for Paris Lake and Scholar Plus, I think the needs assessment that was done prior to this school year, there was that need for that wellness support, the students that were struggling with, various, anxiety or, things that were affecting their academics. And so, you know, we put a lot of emphasis and support in providing that, you know, the wraparound services, and that's what the funds were used for this school year. You know, as we transition for next school year, you know, one of the pieces of feedback that we received this year was that it was difficult to send students over to the Paris Lake High School if they were a student with an IEP or a student who was an EL student, because they lacked supports. And so that's feedback that we received, and that's valuable feedback that we could write into the LCAP now and create an action item and then direct some funds to support that area.
Thank you. I'm really in love. I'm really loving the conversations we're all having right now. In regards to goal number 1, we talk. It highlights mathematics at the very bottom. Unfortunately, I think it should be the other way around, but that's just an opinion.
I am an English teacher, so I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. And I'm glad it's captured there, because we're looking at all of our data that we're talking about. Everybody brags about California. California has the highest graduation success rate. Yeah, but what are we placed nationwide when it comes to education and academics? Exactly, right? Way at the bottom. So I'm referencing Compton School District. The reason why I'm referencing there, I went to an event recently, I just brought that up, and it captured my attention. How engaged everyone was. And they literally put their money where their mouths were. They reinvested in their students and in their community. And I'm using them as an example because what really got my attention from all the data was the most simplest thing. Why did they have the longest sitting superintendent in California? And I thought about it. Well, Compton didn't have a great reputation, but why does it have a great reputation now? And I'm seeing this firsthand. Well, if a superintendent's not doing very well, usually they get the boot somehow or they leave, right? But why is he the longest sitting? And he looks young.
Yeah.
So it made me process.
Dr. Brawley, I think.
So it made me process this. You know, what are they doing right for this recognition? Why is Dr. Dre donating $10 million to this district or to the new campus, right? And so I'm thinking about all these things we could do. We're always talking about things on the surface level, and it goes back to rebranding and changing the mindset. What are we really doing? What more can we do? Well, the truth is we could be limitless, right? We could start asking businesses for donations. We could ask the base or Skydive over here for opportunities for our kids to be successful. They could donate aviation technology to simulators. What else can they do? Limitless, right? We can ask training programs at the grocery stores right down the street. You know, there's so many ideas out there, and I'm throwing these things out there because I want everybody's wheels to be turning. What can we do that's free as well? You know, we're limited with the funds we have, but are these the actual goals we really need right now? And how deep does it go? So even though we're talking about mathematics and we're talking about language arts, what more is there? There's a lot more. Where is it? Well, maybe I have to relook at it again. But mental illness, right? We talk about it, but then we don't talk about it. Then we throw money at lawsuits and we throw money at IEPs and 504s. When does that end? When are we going to help the kids?
Right.
It's just a Band-Aid. It's time
Being
to change our
proactive.
mindset. Yes.
Being proactive instead of reactive.
Yes, and I know you have it because you were talking about it, but I need you to share that wealth of information to everyone so everyone could be on your page. Please.
Thank you. I'm writing everything down.
I see
you guys
that,
don't want
yeah.
to listen to everything you guys say. You're going to see this in the LCAP, so.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
And you are doing a great job, by the way.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Very good.
I'm not as nervous as I was when I started. But. All right, Mr. Campos, you had started talking about our LCAP progress highlights. Now, what I'm really proud of is that we're going in the right direction. We're increasing. We're declining where we need to decline, like we're declining in our suspension rates. So we're moving in the right direction. But Mr. Campos, you are absolutely correct. We have a long way to go. So, for instance, Mr. Garcia, you were talking about mathematics. We increased 12 points. That's amazing. We will take any win. However, we're still 126 distance from standard. We have a long way to go. But the good news is we're moving in the right direction. Another thing I want you to take a look at, and I didn't include it in here, but this is there's a link that goes directly to the dashboard, is in that mathematics area. You can see in the red there's 3 demographic groups there. Those are 3 student groups that are still struggling in mathematics. And so we have to make sure that we have a goal and an action, or a goal one to be for academics, and an action to support those demographics. And so that's how we use our data to inform what we put in our LCAP. Mr. Garcia?
I apologize, but these are like I said, the conversations we have to have.
Yes.
And we don't get to share this information with everybody all the time. First of all, I want to say kudos because I understand the dashboard is very clear about suspension rates. But I also am an employee for a public school system. And everyone that I talk to, and you being a former principal, you can attest, well, maybe you can, I don't know if you want to stay quiet, but we believe that this information on suspension rates are suppressed. It's designed to be hidden from the Board of Education and the public. So in theory, the campus is great, but in reality, campus could be chaotic. I want real data. If a student deserves to be suspended, you suspend them, but then we have an alternative backup plan. Hey, okay, maybe you do need to be part of the inland program. Maybe you need to be participating. Somehow work still gets accomplished. We have to help them. And yes, there's a balance of counseling and discipline, but it can't be just one or the other and thinking the problem is going to be resolved. So I'm just throwing that out there because I want everybody to keep talking about all this.
Okay. That's a note for our Director of Pupil Services.
Well, and sometimes we know that because when I was involved in LCAP committees, I know sometimes it's kind of a little skewed because sometimes you have a frequent flyer, you know what I mean? And that kid's wreaking havoc and messing up all the numbers, and it's not necessarily, obviously, and then if they're categorized into a group, it's kind of like, okay, you have, 10 suspensions, but it's one kid who's got 7 of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So then the whole group is kind of put in a light of that's not really reflective of what's actually going on, besides the fact that it's one kid who's just, a little tornado. But no, I mean that. So on those reds, and so when we're allocating funds, we're looking at. Are we targeting? Obviously, red and oranges, and trying to maintain yellow and
Correct.
all the way above.
Yeah, so when you see certain demographic groups in the red or orange, that is there has to be a required action that addresses that in the LCAP. And so, in all of the different categories, any demographic that is red or orange has to be listed in the LCAP, and there has to be a specific action that is, or a plan that's going to support in that area. And when our LCAP gets reviewed by the County Office of Ed, they look for those things. They look at our data and they read through the LCAP and they make sure that we're addressing it.
Now on the testing, because everything's so a regular student, are they being tested on? Are they being expected to be? They're going to see material that's all the way up to Algebra 2, or are there variations of the test?
I'm going to defer that question to.
Algebra 2.
Okay.
Algebra 2.
Okay. So
That's
if
great.
you have kids that just struggle, maybe math's just not their thing, but they have their basics down. But just once they start getting all the algebraic stuff and higher level math, then those kids are so. Granted, they're gonna struggle on that test. So and then there's nothing we can do to kind of. Like if we know a kid's not going to go to college and so that they're not going to need Algebra 2, and we can identify them, let's just say by 10th grade, like, hey, there's a struggle here. The kids, middle school struggled, whatever.
Yeah.
At that point, can they be redirected in taking other math classes that might be more practical, like life skill type stuff, just stuff that that they might use, because most of us don't use, algebra on a regular basis or Algebra 2 or a lot of geometry, but even if they did have those classes, they would still have to take the test with the Algebra 2 in it. Okay, so it's kind of, so that's just kind of the system. So there's always going to be that lack of success.
What about the style of teaching for them, for the different styles of learning? Is that a factor? Is that something we could do?
Mr. Garcia, you're talking about language here.
Yes and no, but
You're
it's
talking
also,
about UDL. You're getting complicated. I like it.
Yeah. I've known about it for many years.
I like
I just don't see it happening in California much.
Yeah.
yeah, it's tough.
I know.
You'll see that one of the expenditures that we have under Goal 1, which is our academic goal, is supporting our math teachers. We did collaborate with our County Office of Ed and the Community of Practice for Math and all of our math content area groups. How many meetings did they have? They met throughout the school year as content groups. Yeah. And to really build upon that best first instruction, and really teaching math literacy and using research-based strategies to support all the learners, using some universal design for learning, like you were talking about, like having the different supports and scaffolds.
Is there
all
like a
learners.
formula, or is it just, I don't know, how do we figure out what type of style the student needs to learn? Like, is there a process? Is there a test?
Yeah.
Or is it just through experience from kinder all the way up?
One of the things that our teachers are so wonderful at doing is really understanding and getting to know their students,
Right.
and then using different methods to
Right.
deliver instruction, and also different methods to assess for mastery. That it doesn't have to be just one way. It doesn't have to be an exam.
Right.
That they can do a presentation, or they can do a podcast if they're too shy to present in class.
Really?
Different ways to measure learning. And that's really something that is taught under that universal design for learning,
Yeah.
and also best first instruction. And so our teachers, our math teachers specifically, receive that professional development this school year, and they will continue.
So is it fair to say that our teachers in our district, they're not chained, they're not handcuffed to a certain style, that they're free to teach however they want? Really? I like that. Thank you.
Well, and you know what? The more and more I think about it, it's a state issue because, when you think about it, it's kind of unfair. There's some kids who just mathematically they're not there. It's not their strength. They might be great with their hands. They might be great writers, but just maybe math. And then now math is getting more wordy and a little bit different. We used to have one of our best teachers in the middle school. He gave 2 tests. One was a harder one, and on the other side it was an easier one. They were both algebra tests, but one he was kind of he was kind of like, hey, you take your best shot at what you think you know. So the kids could look at them, and they didn't cheat themselves. You know what I mean? Like the smarter kid who wanted to be challenged, they were like, oh, I can, this is the one I want to take it, and they took it. But see, I wish we had that for our students at the end of the year, because there might be some kids who might be able to test out doing decently well at an algebra level, maybe up to geometry.
Yeah.
And it could change the numbers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it bums me out that's just the way that the system's set
Right.
up. It's almost set up for some to fail.
Yeah,
There's just students that just freeze on any kind of test that they have to take.
that's true.
And so as a teacher, hopefully they can recognize that.
Mhm.
And, is there any kind of training where they can just relax? We teach them how to relax.
Mhm.
My son, for one, is horrible at taking tests.
Mhm.
But he's got all the bookwork down pat.
Mhm.
When it comes to that test, he's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
so afraid to make a mistake that he
Yeah.
makes tons of mistakes. So, that type of training to teach kids how to take tests, how to prepare for them and stuff. So.
Thank you so much for your feedback. And what I'm hearing is, we want to be able to measure our students' mastery, and not just this one way.
And not just in mathematics.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. In the LCAP, there's a section where we talk about our baseline and our metrics and the data. And I'm writing down my notes, and now I'm my wheels are spinning, thinking, okay, what are other ways that we can measure? And so we can put in our DNF rates, we can put in A through G completion as different ways to measure student progress, so that it's not all just one way. Unfortunately, this is the big one.
Yeah.
This is the one that we're held the most accountable for, but we can put in those other measures of progress.
And I know what the question I'm going to ask is kind of naive, and I think I know the answer, but I want to know, is A through G the absolute requirement? They have to? Is that the standard? Can we deviate and maybe excel above A through G? Excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have our graduation requirements, but here in the Paris Union High School District, we want to make sure that our students are prepared college and beyond, and that's one of our superintendent's priorities. And my point of view, and this is personal, so I apologize, but my thinking is A through G, although the way that it's branded is that it's for college. You have to have your A through G in order to go to college. But my thinking is, if you're not going to a university or college right after high school, then this is the highest level of education you're going to receive.
Right.
I want you to have the best, most
That's right.
rigorous
Right.
level of education. And so I don't want to water it down and say, okay, well,
Right.
let's just do the bare minimum. I want to help students so that they're prepared for for critical thinking and for
Yes.
communication. And so A through G kind of, although it is branded as just completing your requirements for college, it really teaches you those skills that are going to help you be successful beyond high school.
I know you answered my question, but is there anything above A through G? Or is that just the state
I
requirement?
can answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Krause.
I think that is a wonderful question, Trustee Garcia. Yes, our commitment is to prepare the students to go to college and to, when they graduate from high school, they can make the decision through a technical career, that is the CTE program,
Right.
and college. Answering specifically your question about going above the A through G, yes. We are focusing on helping our students meet the IGETC,
Okay.
intersegmental general education transfer curriculum. So when the ultimate goal is when a student graduates from high school, they get a high school diploma and they are meeting their IGETC. 2 years of college are already
Right.
completed.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, this year we are piloting the first IGETC program at Heritage High School.
Okay, good.
So we made an analysis of the system that we have with Mountain San Jacinto College. And we don't have all the courses
Right.
throughout these years. And I mentioned this in a board meeting that this program of dual enrollment has been since 2014. It started when Trustee Araux, back then,
That's right, yeah.
pushed to have this
I know
program. Yeah, probably you know him. Yes. And that was one of the reasons as a superintendent I want to make this program stronger.
Right.
It has been developed to a certain degree, but we are not offering all the courses. So we are looking into, can RCC help us? Can the University of California, San Bernardino, UCSB,
Right.
help us to do that?
Right.
Because that is the ultimate goal, to help the students.
Yes.
And also, after we finish with that, because it has to be one step at a time, right?
Right.
Once we implement the IGETC, the next step is to get the AA, the associate degree.
Yeah.
That is not the same that the IGETC, right? You need to take some more courses.
Okay.
So
we're just creating a pathway that makes it easily accessible for them. to complete.
exactly, yes. And the reason is we don't want to water this down and give options for lower level
I
because
don't
all of our students are capable.
Right.
We believe in
Yeah.
our students. All of them are capable to go to college or get into the workforce with a good technical career.
And see, this is exactly what we're talking about, changing the mindset of like the old school, bringing the new school in. You know, if we engage with our teachers, they're going to turn around and re-engage with the students and get their brain going, right? You know, and I don't want to badmouth any district, but in some districts, they're taking away the children's free time. So they can no longer use their imagination during playground time or recess, what we call it. And now it's structured. So where is their mind, where's their imagination going? It's not. They're not developing those skills. And then if they have an imagination, guess what? They can invent something and get society going into another level. You know, I mean, that's the way I think. I want to make sure everybody's wheels are constantly turning and
That's
growing.
right.
So that's what I want to
Yeah.
see more engagement with our teachers, our administrators,
Yeah.
directors. Let's hold everybody accountable. Let's really,
And
you know,
yes,
put
it's-
Paris on the map. Let's outshine Compton, you know?
Expanding on that, Trustee Garcia and I think Trustee Campos also talk about involving our teachers, our counselors. I can tell you this, if you are going to see the results during the budget presentation about a strategic laser focused approach. First, in order to increase student achievement, that is one of our goals, right? That is a common goal that we have.
Yep.
Our students need to be in school.
Yes.
Right? So we developed a strategic, laser-focused approach with attendance, and you are going to be seeing the results. Not only we are going to see it from the academic perspective, but also from the financial perspective. That is a huge increase that it has been happening during this second semester only. And I want to thank all of you because in the first semester I was asking about we need to make a decision to really focus on attendance. And at the end of the semester, I begged the board to help me make the decision to have the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, and you support that request, right? And yes, you are going to see the accomplishment during this second semester.
Okay.
What I want to get into is, after that, addressing that issue, immediately at the same time, in a parallel way, we started developing the IGETSI program, NDAA, with input from all the counselors. I called for a meeting and all the principals were invited, Dr. Tomasian, Dr. Egan's, and all the counselors. So we share about the goal, the systems in place that we wanted to do, that we believe about the students, and it was a shared goal that we had. But
Okay.
you know what they called my attention? I shared with them the laser focus approach on attendance and that we were improving. Do you know what one of them told me?
What's that?
Because I was talking about attendance recovery, right? Attendance recovery and how successful, and it has been a team effort of everybody, certificated and classified staff, the associations, it has been wonderful.
You turn it off.
So we were excited, and one of them said, that's wonderful, attendance recovery. What about, we have wonderful programs here, we talk about the marketing, the rebranding, and all the specific strategic systems that we are putting in place in order to achieve that. What we are going to do, Dr. Arauz, not only attendance recovery, we are going to do enrollment recovery. The students who left for another schools, they are going to come back because they are going to see that wonderful programs that we have and our wonderful teachers, our wonderful staff, our wonderful counselors that we have at Paris Union. So that was very exciting and motivating, Trustee Garcia, to hear our own staff coming up with that idea, enrollment recovery.
I love it.
Not only that, all our students, they are going to come back.
Yeah.
They are going to come back because we really have the programs here, plus with a strategic approach in terms of the IGETSI and the AA. So I'm really glad that you asked that question about what are we doing to go above and beyond the A3E.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. I know we keep cutting you off, but I'm sorry.
No,
there's
that's
this-
great. I
We
love
wish we have these conversations a while back because we all keep
Right.
talking about it. We
Yeah.
keep talking about it. We're like, what's really happening? And then here you come, boom. So it's opportunity. Also, I don't want to forget about you, Doc. Like seriously, I got some plans for you because the things that you're doing, they're amazing. Just got to get everybody on board.
I apologize for being late.
No. No, I'm just talking about what good achievements you've been accomplishing. No, seriously, we all just got to keep working together. Yeah, thank you.
This is why at the beginning I was sharing how excited I am for this collaboration and to start this, and really we're only required to do an LCAP update once in the middle in February and then again at the end of the year. But I hope that we can continue this conversation and have it more frequently so that we can let you know how we're doing, what our progress is, and if we need to make adjustments. And we can't do it by ourselves. We need your input, and you have the ear of your community, your trustee area, and we need that information. So this is what we were talking about earlier with some more challenges. Although we did see some gains, we did see a decline in certain things, and so that's why we have a laser focus on enrollment recovery and attendance recovery, because our chronic absentee rate continues to be a challenge for us. Our English learner progress continues to be a challenge for us as well. And then also, as we mentioned before, our math progress is struggling. Now, something I want you to take a look at is when you see math and this certain demographic, foster youth, long-term English learner, African American, the number there, the number of students, 192, 18, 469, that's for compare it to 11,000 students, we can meet with 192 students.
Oh yeah.
We can, by name and by need, we
Right.
can talk to them.
Right.
We can do one-on-one. We can direct supports. And so those are things that we want to write into the LCAP of how we're going to help these students, particularly to help and get those gains.
Is that something that wasn't practiced before?
It
Or now
was.
it's okay. We're really going to focus on it.
Yes,
Oh,
yes, we
good.
can. It was practiced before to an extent, and like you said earlier, sometimes we had challenges with, funding any after-school programs, or but if this is our priority, then we can allocate funding and move things around to make sure that we're really supporting.
I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. So on the LTELs,
Yes.
are they, and I haven't been involved in the EL world in a while, but are they starting to separate them, like as a different category now?
Correct.
And is there any correlation to maybe being a learning disability as opposed to the language barrier, or
Good question.
That's a great question. So this is the first year that LTELs are separated. And there could be other learning challenges. That's something that we have to really identify and target and support. Some of our students, if English isn't their first language, but they've been here for quite a long time, they're practicing their language acquisition at school, but then when they go home, they're going back to their home language. And so, there's that disconnect. And so it's something that we can continue to focus on.
Now, are we identifying that in like high school or ninth grade? And I mean, obviously there's a pro and a con. I mean, the kid who is learning all the English at school and then going back home, I mean, the bonus, they're bilingual.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
And so obviously through time, both of those will continue to increase. Actually, in time, the English might, as they get older into adulthood, which is a good thing, but they'll always have
Yeah.
that bilingual background. But
Yeah.
so are we so now as they're categorizing, are we, so is that going to start like with ninth grade, or are we going to have juniors that are now categorized who were just EL before, but now they're LTELs as a senior, or are we starting like with the new incoming ones so that we can kind of track them or will they be kind of thrown into the bunch
Yeah.
based on their year and the new categorization?
Mr. Chippy, correct me if I'm wrong, but LTELs have always been a category. However, it's just the first year that the dashboard has recognized them.
Two answers to the question. So the LTEL is based on their first U.S. school entry date, so the first time that they started in a U.S. school, and then also combined with their success on state testing. So if they're not being successful, then they're into this category of long-term English learners. So it does depend, it varies by grade, so you can't be an LTEL if you're in 4th grade, for example.
Right.
You have to be 5th grade and above. And then a very interesting question that you had, and something that we've been looking at in our data chats with our teachers. The percentages of LTELs that are also on an IEP is about anywhere from 30 to 45% at each school. So there's definitely a connection there. And we've been working with our special ed department to provide additional supports and looking at that for next year. So.
Okay, well, thanks for identifying all that, looking into that.
And for LTELs, we really need to connect and work with our feeders on how they support that reclassification process in the elementary, which will, help reduce that percentage.
Okay, thank you.
From a fiscal standpoint, that's how we receive our concentration, our supplemental funding is based on what we call our unduplicated student population, and our English learners are part of that. The reason why it's called unduplicated is because if they fall under 2 categories, like you mentioned, if they happen to have an IEP and are also an English learner, they only get counted once. All right.
But now, so on that question, so if they're identified with an IEP, then do they get Title I funding or is it just one?
So the Title I funding, although it's targeted towards students who are failing or at risk of failing, we can provide supports that actually benefit all students, even though it's targeted for a specific student.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or I was thinking special ed funding. Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Now, in addition, we have a few areas where we were identified for differentiated assistance, meaning that under the California System of Support, as it says here, there are 2 specific student groups. LTEL is one of them that we've been talking about, and also our homeless students, or McKinney-Vento students. So particularly in these 3 areas, ELA, math, and chronic absentee for our homeless student population. And for our LTELs, it's not just English and math, but also the college and career indicator, which is the CCI, and that includes the indicators include A through G completion, CTE pathway completion. It also includes participation in our AP courses and our dual, our dual enrollment. And so, because it's identified as differentiated assistance, we have to have specific actions in our LCAP that address these areas. And so, particularly for the college and career indicator there for long-term English learners, there's going to be a push to really involve our LTEL students in CTE programs and our AP programs, different things that can help them in that college preparedness. All right. let's get to the money. So we talked about the LCFF, the local control funding formula. Our overall funds was $158 million. However, that funding that we received, the supplemental and the concentration that is directed towards our high need students was about $34 million. And there is some information on how we spent that money, but okay, I think this is in the wrong place, but this our planned improvements for next year based on our comprehensive needs assessment, some of the things that we've already identified that we want to improve upon for next year. So some of our actions that we identified that were not as effective, that we want to adjust, amend, and then some actions that were effective that we want to continue. And so these are just some of the ideas that we have planned improvements already for next school year. Things that we've already talked about, targeted support in ELA and math, expansion of best first instruction, AVID Wicker strategies, enhanced coaching for ELD, and our special education, things that we've already talked about. I love that you're mentioning them because those are written into the LCAP already, which is amazing. But anything that you've mentioned to me today that is not in there, those are things that we can put into the LCAP. Okay, we can't make big sweeping changes. We can't change goals right now because we're within that 3-year cycle. But when it's time to prepare for the next 3-year cycle, I'll be coming to you for assistance in developing those new goals.
You just made a statement. We cannot change the goals during the 3-year Okay.
No.
So once we approve it, that's what it is for 3 years.
Yes. However, we can make adjustments.
Okay.
And so we can make adjustments to the actions, not specifically, the goals will remain what they are,
Okay.
but the actions we can amend. And so part of what's in your LCAP packet is for each goal, we do a goal analysis and we take a look at what we implemented, how much money we spent towards that, and then if it was effective or not effective. And then the fourth area is, if it wasn't as effective, what are we going to do to change it? And so we're able to make those adjustments throughout. And before we make any adjustments, I will always come here and talk to you about it first.
Perfect.
And I'm going to show you data. And I'm going to say, hey, we had this action item. It's not working out so great. We need some ideas. We might need to shift some funds to help support that. Before anything changes in that document, I'm going to need your approval and your support and your input.
You guys are amazing. 2 quick questions. Are there stipends for teachers tutoring kids after school, math, anything where the kids need like how we have summer programs as well? This is the other part. Do we have anything during spring break where they could help make up part of a class, or after school for a certain amount of time to make up a grade for a failing grade or something like that? Do we have anything like that?
We don't necessarily have something during spring break, but we do have our Scholar Saturdays. And we also have our after-school tutoring programs. Some of our schools have before-school tutoring programs through Think Togethers or before and after school.
And
so
how does that benefit
pockets
their
of
grade
this.
through Think Together? Does that benefit the kids' grade through Think Together? Or I want to know how they can improve their grades or test results per se.
Yeah, Think Together will offer tutoring in math or ELA or whatever.
But does that
area.
benefit the child with their actual grade rather than an after-school? Because that's babysitting club, right? Think Together, similar?
You could call it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm used to. So, for example, when we have teachers in here, do we have stipends for teachers to stay after the normal shift or assignment to help a special class and say, hey, I'd like to tutor you guys. You guys sign up, and if they're failing this grade, they could recover from that. Make it passing grade.
We have money allocated to pay for, to time card teachers if they are staying after school to work with students to offer tutoring opportunities, and also for our Scholar Saturday opportunities where we
And Scholar Saturday is more of a recovery of the grade, correct?
We do recover attendance as well for
No,
Scholar
the
Saturdays,
grade.
but for grades they
Yeah.
can. They can. Yeah.
Let's look more into that then.
Yes. Now, for instance, I know that usually around AP time, our AP teachers will offer, tutoring sessions or cram sessions before AP exams. Some schools, I believe, offer those as well before final exams to offer additional.
Well, I guess one of my personal goals I would like to see is that throughout the year, because also when students either hit 18 or about to graduate, ASVAB comes up, and that's challenging. You want them to succeed and get the highest score, get a really well-paying job in the military if they choose to go down that path. These are just things that we've all had conversations about, and now we're able to vocally because you're listening.
Yes.
Well, not you, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nathan's going to talk to you in a little bit about CMI. CMI gets extended learning opportunity
Awesome.
funding, so you can ask him about that later on.
Do we have
because
enough-
that's only for lower grades.
Do we have enough money for those stipends for those teachers after schools and all that? Is that something?
There is money. Is it enough money? That's always the question, but there is money. But if it's a priority for us,
Right.
we can shift funds over to there.
Okay.
Awesome.
Good.
Kind of like what Candace says. There's always. How do you move it around? Say it again.
There's
I'm
always,
like, what?
How do you work? How do you work?
So you can have anything you want,
that's the one.
but you may not be able to have everything you
Right.
want.
That's the quote.
I say a lot of things. So.
Yeah. No. But that was the quote. You read my
Focus
mind.
on a plan. Which other
Yes.
ones do you want?
Right now,
I'm
just
gonna
not.
have to write these down.
Thank you.
I might
Though.
just bring them up later on.
You guys can say Candaceisms
yes.
when I'm gone.
Yes.
I didn't hear that.
Well, you can say Candaceisms after I'm gone.
Right. We're saying it now.
Yeah. There is always funding,
Okay.
but sometimes it just means we have to switch priority areas and shift things around.
So then that would just be the site administrator coming to you guys to request for that funding, correct?
So what we're hoping to do is to do comprehensive needs assessments that our administration and help them write their school plans, much like we do our LCAPs, and then they can do the same type of, progress monitoring throughout the year and make adjustments if they need it. What we really would like to do, the way that we have local control to plan, I want the principals to have that ability to really determine what their sites need and plan for it.
because every site's different.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. That way, we can make sure that each site is receiving funding. So let's say, for example, we're going to provide for professional development or teacher support, and we provide an allocation for the school sites. Then the school sites can determine how they want to, they can have a plan for professional development and decide how they want to do that at their school, the way that it serves their needs the best.
So I know with everything that we're talking about, I'm hoping you're seeing what we're trying to say. So I guess I'm saying it. What else can we do to free everybody up to get the requests met?
Yeah.
I mean, administrators at every school, is there anything in particular we need to do? Do we need to make anything specific an action item and, just vote on it? Or are we just saying, hey, let's take the gloves off and do what you got to do? What are we doing?
Yeah.
I think just having these conversations and really providing us your feedback, one of the things that you're going to be approving is also the school plans, and that's where the sites get to talk about what they need, much like I'm here talking at the district level.
How recent
The
are
site
those school plans?
They just finished them last week,
Perfect.
which is a week later than I asked, but they got them done.
We'll work on the timeline later.
Well, I want to work on it with them throughout the year so
Yeah.
that they're not cramming it all at the end, and we can get things done in pieces.
That makes
so,
sense.
I like systems. I don't like doing everything all at once at the end. I like doing things little by little throughout. So that's
Okay. Organized
what we're hoping
chaos.
to do. Yeah. So I wanted to show you just an overview of the budget. You had mentioned before, is there one priority area that we've been targeting? Well, as you can see here, we've been targeting our college and career, really promoting that college-going culture, our AVID programs, our CTE, but also our student well-being, really building those robust wellness centers, wraparound services. But as you can see, we spent a little bit less on our academic goals. And now that we're starting to really, we want to sustain those wellness programs and those college and career. And so now that those are going well, we want to now kind of shift our focus to academic and see what we can do to bump up that area so that we can start seeing gains in terms of our academic data. Okay. And then the next few pages this is the budget overview for parents, which I'm going to be talking about as well during the public hearing. When we do the public hearing later on, it's going to be a condensed version of this same presentation. But, if we have members of the public that are going to join us and they have questions for me, then I'm able to have that conversation with them directly. And so, again, our total funds, and then the total funds that are the supplemental concentration that are directed towards the students that need that additional assistance. And then just a recap of the big expenditures that we had for 24-25. A big chunk will go towards salaries, the transportation, there's conferences here. Please remember that LCAP Goal 1 is the academic goal. So all of the expenditures under this goal are specifically targeted to increase our achievement in ELA and math. Okay. And then we did have some money allocated there for ELD, intervention sections. Our instructional technology falls under this area as well. Okay. Now this is what we have budgeted for the 25-26 school year. Like I shared earlier, this LCAP is a living, breathing document, so there is nothing set in stone. And if there are themes that we have to shift and move around for next school year, right now the budget is finished and it's been submitted. However, after the fact, if we want to change anything or make adjustments, again, I'm going to come here again and talk to you about it, tell you why, show you some data before we get things approved. Okay? And this is also in your book. So. And this is where I'm really going to need your help.
Quick question on transportation.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to say approximately, 400,000 to 500,000 per site on average or whatever. On that, does that include athletics, or is that separate? Is that a separate funding line, or does athletics absorb the majority of that?
No, the majority is definitely the home to school.
Or home to school, okay.
Transportation, and so this is the part that our state revenues don't cover. Pretty sure we could do that, right, or 1,100. So we use our unrestricted lottery for athletics transportation. So this is just the home to school piece.
Okay, so there's home to school piece, and then very little is left for fun academic.
I'm being careful how I answer that because all of it has to go with what Mr. Garcia said earlier. We can't say very little is left over. It's about the decisions that you all make, and we can fund anything we want. We just not be so we can rearrange some things, as Ms. Chavez said. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but we can't change the home to school. That's so then it's kind of like whatever's left over is
after that. It's to do everything
okay.
else. Yes,
Thank you.
That's a good question.
Never mind. That's a question I can ask later. Okay.
I'm gonna write down.
Shifting over to goal 2. So goal 2 is our college and career. A majority of this will go towards our AVID programs, our AVID release section, providing the AVID professional development, additional support from our counselors, more CTE teachers because we are, adding more pathways so that our students can, have those opportunities. So that's where a majority of our 24-25 budget went. And we are planning on continuing those supports for next school year. We may be making some adjustments with AVID. That's kind of one of the things that Dr. Egan's has been talking with us about. Right now we do receive support from RIMS AVID that we pay for, which is out San Bernardino County, but Riverside County has supports. And so we've been talking about ways that we can, continue to support those programs, but try and minimize costs.
The indirects.
Mm-hmm.
I know there was a different line on the other one. Maybe I missed it. What's an indirect?
What are indirect costs?
Candace, want to answer
I
that
can
one?
answer, yeah. So an indirect cost is added to it's a fixed percentage that's set on an annual basis for all restricted funds or categoricals for the support costs of administering those grants.
So that's just making sure everybody's
Yes.
part of your salaries are all indirect costs of.
We're paying bills out of here. We're paying payroll out of here.
Yes. Got it.
We're hiring people out of here.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and then we have our LCAP goal 3, which is our student well-being. We do fund our SROs out of this. For next school year, our SRO costs are increasing, but that is a priority area for us, and so we want to make sure that that remains in our LCAP, budgeted in our LCAP.
One of the reasons that I would like to share with you the increase in the SRO is because for the last 2 or 3 years, Ms. Reyes, the city of Paris was supporting us with half the cost of the SRO. This year, the city of Paris, according to the mayor, said that they decided that they are not going to do it. But we haven't received, I don't know if this already had been officially voted by the city council, that that was the case. According to the info, Mr. Cannon is not here. He was told that it was going to be presented to the city council, the recommendation of not to fund, but it was presented to us as already a decision. So I really don't know how the situation is there. We have not been notified officially with a letter as a result, as a resolution from the city council.
Can we send a letter to the city and ask?
We did.
We did already.
You,
I'm sorry?
you signed it.
Yes, yes.
So, and just for clarification, if you don't mind, Dr. Rouse, this is the 2024-25
Yes.
amounts, and
This
so,
is the,
and then the 25-26 is the one, oh, sorry, those are just too small for me.
25,
Oh, so
26,
sorry.
So
the
as
one
you were
that is
saying,
included
so
that,
the
yes.
Riverside Sheriff's part will double, I think you said, Chief, the Menifee PD part will stay, well,
Will
it'll
stay
just
the
go up
same,
its
yeah.
normal amount.
So it'll be $1,012,000?
Well, only 3/5 of it'll go up by
Oh,
double.
no, I'm sorry.
506.
Okay.
That was not the easiest way to say
I didn't
that.
see Menifee and Riverside Sheriff's together. I thought they were separate lines. Okay.
Yeah.
Quick question: why is safety and security only $60,000 when we had that addressed earlier?
That was the increase amount.
Oh, the increased
That was the
amount,
increase amount. From, I remember what you're talking about.
the 100,000 and the ongoing. So what is it?
Yeah, 'cause was, I think,
174,
15 or
175.
so
Yes.
previously, is that right?
Yes.
I remember.
So what is the total right now?
That's
60,000. Yeah, that's for the training,
Just training.
for professional development.
Okay, but not the actual budget
That's what we have budgeted for
for the whole
training.
department.
no,
Just
no,
just
no.
for
Can I,
Oh,
sorry.
yes.
This is just the LCAP supplemental concentration portion.
you know where I was going there.
We did exactly what you asked last
Okay.
year.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. I didn't want to get you in trouble. Your first meeting.
Oh, I know, oh my gosh. But I do know that, because we have the other categorical funding and, funding gets rated to support those, different things. I know that, we were, supporting with, buying some technology for our campus supervisors, and I believe that's coming out of a different funding source.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay. And then, Mr. Campos, I want to draw your attention that we do have our stipends for extracurricular activities here. This is for athletics, so there's the second line. I know it's difficult to see,
Yeah.
but that's for athletics, ASB clubs, and those are the stipends that we provide for our teachers that do those additional duties.
And that's for like coaches and,
Correct.
but that's not athletic, that's just extracurricular.
We,
Or is athletics in
athletic
the
is
day? Okay.
included in there. Well, actually, athletic stipends 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth line down. Excuse me, I misspoke. Yeah,
Oh,
we
got it.
separated it.
Okay, oh, okay, good.
Athletic stipends. One of the things that we heard a lot from our coaches and our athletic directors was that there were some programs that they couldn't support because we didn't have assistant coaches, and so we tried to to support that in the LCAP.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, it's extremely important, any athletic director, any coach will tell you that if you're not funding the lower levels, your freshmen and all that kind of, because a lot of times everybody's focused on the varsity level, but
Yeah.
the reality is those freshmen become seniors.
Correct.
And if you don't have personnel there teaching them kind of the basics of what's going on, then your programs are doomed. So I'm glad that we took care of that, because that just ensures kind of some consistency in that we're investing in our younger athletes so that when they move up, they've gotten a steady stream of kind of coaching, and so good. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. It was a safety issue as well. If there's only one coach and you're in an away game and, should something happen. And so we wanted, again, and that's from feedback from our educational partners and parents and, and so we're able to make that a priority. All right.
Good job. Thank you.
So LCAP Goal 4 is our family and community engagement. I know it looks lower, $458,000, but we do have other opportunities and other resources that support our family engagement. And we also have title dollars where we're required to spend a percentage towards family and community engagement. All right.
I have a question. Are we always on an ongoing looking for grants and stuff, or does that just happen during the beginning of the year? And I mean, how does that?
We're always looking for
Okay.
opportunities.
So if we can find more money elsewhere, we can always add.
Yeah.
Oh, just
Yeah. We have I know 2 new ones for wellness coming up for next school year that we had applied for. We have a new weekend work grant that's going to be supporting workability opportunities for our special education students and our students who are in our transition, at PALS. And so we have some exciting new programs that are coming up that are funded by some new grants that we have.
Cool. So now, on that note, so a lot of these grants, are they private sector, or are they like state, public?
They're state.
They're state, okay. So now, so maybe, and that's, I know, one of the things that, when we went to the CABZ conference and stuff, that the partnerships that, and I know Compton specifically, but other school districts have, with like the Gates Foundation, all these other ones, those are the ones, I think at that conference alone, they were saying that they were doubling, I don't know if it was 500, and I forgot what, I don't know if it was the Hewlett Packard Foundation, but they were doubling from 500 to 1 million. And so, kind of along the same line, looking out for those kind of private dollars. I think because we're doing so many different things, like the ag thing, that's not, around here, that's not, everybody doesn't have that. You might go down the Fresno area or Central California, they might have some of those programs, but for us, it's kind of unique in this area to have that. And, it'd be great to find partnerships, with the private corporate world to kind of fund these, because a lot of times, who knows what part of, they might be in that kind of industry, or I know that there's a lot of philanthropy out there that's willing to donate to money, but they're not just going to say, hey, Parish Union, here you go.
Yeah.
We heard you have a great this program. You know what I mean? It's kind of us going out there and, kind of like what Mr. Garcia said about branding, or just letting people know, hey, these are the things that we're doing. We have, the robotics thing and how well we did at a couple of our high schools. Those are things that I would like to think that somewhere in the corporate world, that people will be like, whoa, that's, hey, let's help them out. We've got some great minds over there, and let's, help them with some cash to kind of be more creative and innovative. But yeah, that would be one of my asks, just to kind of see how we can branch out with that. And one of the schools in Compton Middle School, they have a Verizon STEM lab.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I thought it was cool that it's like, oh, it's a Verizon.
Yeah.
Instead of our own, Panther or whatever. Yeah. But it's just like, those are the kind of things that, if we can get people involved, it helps obviously with the funding. But, then I think the community kind of sees that, hey, you know what, I'm paying Verizon, my cell phone and all this other stuff, and they're giving back, and so I think people feel good about it. And, obviously it's an ask, and what's the worst thing they could say? No, right? Because we're already in that situation anyway, so. That would be kind of one of my asks, just to say, hey, how can we get out there and, maybe sponsor something. It might work and it might not, but, if we have kind of like a goal, and I think you guys have a pretty good idea of what we're doing, to be able to sell it and say, hey, it would be really nice, if you guys could partner with us.
Yeah, we got Chick-fil-A, Stater Brothers, Target coming in, all these big corporations.
Amazon,
why not ask them,
we have a lot of stuff. And the reality is that a lot of the investment into the school system, they could someday be their employees, what I mean, and take care of them. And so they'll kind of build that loyalty branding thing. We just say, hey, you know what? Anyways, yeah, thank you for that.
And with some of the money, I don't know, I know we don't have it, but maybe, or even a job description attached to somebody's current position, someone who does grant writing, or even a stipend. That I think that would be very helpful in our district, to continuously looking for grants and money, free money especially.
Thank you. All right. And then brings us to goal 5 that I mentioned before, is the equity multiplier for Paris Lake High School and Scholar Plus. So as you can see, there is quite a bit of funds that's directed for that this year. We spent it on counseling support, social workers, and EARNS therapy support for the students. Oh. And then next year, I don't know why I don't have a 25-26 slide, but it's about a little less, 750,000 for this. And we're working together with our Paris Lake administration to kind of determine how we can support them for next year. Okay. All right, so plans for next year, and these are the things that I'm going to be working on next with Dr. Egan's, is alignment across all of our plans and budgets. So ensuring that these school plans that our administrators are writing are directly aligned with our LCAP. So you can see a through line that we are writing and meeting the needs of the students, but the school sites are writing even more specific plans depending on their specific and unique needs, because all of our schools are different. And then strengthening our accountability system, having clear guidelines for site level budgeting, documentation, and justification, making sure that our spending is responsible, that we're compliant, and that we're ensuring that all of the funds are directed towards student needs, or improving student achievement. And if that means that we're supporting our teachers in certain areas or classified staff, then if that's what's supporting student achievement, then that's where we need to allocate that fund.
I'm telling you, you
It's
say the
okay.
right trigger words. So we've talked about things that are needed for classified. We need a minimum of 2 golf carts for custodians and for security on each campus. We need a facility, if not a C-bin, to house those carts for every campus, because there's so many needs for it, including administrators who want to utilize those carts. Can the LCAP cover that too? We're talking about maintaining the properties, and a good, clean facility for our students.
Yeah.
Why not?
We're gonna have to take a look and see, there is funding in the general fund that's for security and for facilities, and again, it's that braiding of funds to see how we can support and really make these things happen. Sometimes, just one funding source can't support that, and we have to find ways to support, but we always have to make sure that we're following our ed code and our regulations, and that it is something that's allowable. So, and of course, if it's something we wanna do, then we gotta write it in the LCAP.
So how do you keep track or let sites know that, okay, they're pulling it out of the general fund when they didn't know they could be pulling it out of the LCAP?
Yeah.
Do they know all that process?
So the sites get an allocation, like they have a site discretionary, that's their general fund, and then they receive, their funding that's from the other sources. Again, that's something I want to work more closely with our site administrators, and really making sure they understand the different sources of funds that they have, so that they can make plans at the beginning of the year, much like we do in this LCAP process. We want to implement that system at the site level as well, so that our administrators can make informed decisions for their schools, and they can anticipate what needs they have for the following year, and really know, how to allocate their funding and direct their funding for those reasons. Increased transparency in the spending. We want to track and report our LCAP and our state and federal program spending by goal. And we really want to highlight how these supplemental and concentration funds are increasing and improving services for those specific student demographics that are targeted. And then I'm going to ask you to continue this conversation with us, please, and have this year-round stakeholder engagement, and have this regular collaboration with the board, cabinet, our staff, our students, and our families. We have monthly meetings for school site council at each site. We have monthly coffee with admin meetings. We have our quarterly student advisory committee meetings with our superintendent. But we don't have this conversation as often with you, so I'm going to ask if it's okay that we continue this conversation.
Yeah, send us invites.
Frequent.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. And then some of our parents' feedback that we've received is that they also want more opportunities to engage, particularly in 2 areas. We have APACs, African American Parent Advisory Committees, at each of our school sites, but this year we didn't have a district, we didn't have a DAPAC. And our families really said they want district level support for DAPAC. And we've also heard a community advisory committee that's focused on special education and the voices of our special education families. So those are 2 community groups or parent engagement groups that have said we want more of a voice, and so we want to include that in the LCAP, and include their voices for development for next year.
Absolutely. So on that one, the top one, that would be DLAC, because DLAC would be site, and then that's okay.
Yes. All right. So that's all I have for you today. If there's any additional questions, what resonates, just some guiding questions for you to think about as we move forward. And again, I look forward to continue this collaboration. I promise you that the public hearing is going to be a more condensed version of this. And then after the public hearing later on in the afternoon, You'll have an opportunity to kind of, think about it, and if you have some more notes for us, any adjustments you'd like us to make, or if any members of the public have any questions for Dr. Rouse or myself or any of the cabinet members and want some adjustments made, then we can make those. And then on June 18th, we will return here and you will have an opportunity to approve the LCAP, and then that will be submitted to our County Office of Ed, and then we'll be ready for next school year. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you guys for everything.
Any questions or?
I think we can ask.
You know what? I just wanted to say. Go ahead, Chuck.
Oh, no, the way you explain and have all this laid out, it helps understanding and seeing your engagement in it, and you can tell that you're passionate about it. And it's just the leadership that you have, it's gonna trickle down. And the one thing we always say transparency. You put it on when we vote or campaign, it's transparency. That's what's gonna make this district grow, where everybody is on the same page and there's no miscommunication with anybody. So this right here and what you're presenting, it really explains a lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to give a last. I mean, the infographics, and I'm pretty sure that last year's it wasn't like this, because to me there's so much stuff that I'm looking at it. I mean, the special programs right there. I mean, the way that you guys color coordinated that, and it shows all the different services. And I think we had asked for that, but thank you for that, because I can very simply look at this and see, oh well, they've got this going on, and you can see what they have in common, what they have, different things going on. Like Paris has a bar and Think Together, and Heritage has Think Together. But although the one thing I will say that we should probably look into in creating is everybody has robotics except for Pinacati, and that being a pathway to most of the kids going to Paris High School who does have robotics. It might be a good idea to just plant that seed of robotics at a young age. That way, when those kids are kind of ready to move on to high school, it's another option that they have there. But I mean, including the Title I, the explanation, the allocation. I mean, that to me is gold, because I can simply look at that, get a better understanding. And don't get me wrong. I mean, this stuff isn't as fun.
Not fun at all.
But it's necessary, because I mean, obviously, those are the state documents that you guys have to work with, and this is their creativity in organizing all that mess so that we can understand it. So, thank you. I think that was a great presentation. We're excited that you're in the position that you're in, and I'm sure you'll help the administrators navigate around how they can manipulate. Because I know if they're given general fund money, but they could maybe use. They have an idea, they want to do this, and they can, hey, no, why don't you use, restricted funds or LCAP money to do this? And I mean, all that work is, I think we're heading in the right direction. And, our goal is we're not going to create miracles, but we're going to have success and progress. So I'm excited about that, because that seems like that's the direction that we're moving in. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. And remember, that's a living, breathing document.
I know it wasn't just you did everything, but was it the whole department? So can you please thank everyone?
Thank you.
Yes.
We appreciate it. This was very good. Thank you.
We know there's always a team behind it.
You guys had us engaged this time.
And the principals who aren't here. But
Yes.
Yeah, thank everyone, please.
Yeah.
It's important.
We do realize that it's you guys are a community and you're working together, so thank you for that. Okay, 5.1, special meeting of the Board of Trustees for June 22nd. Oh, adjournment, sorry. 5.1 adjournment, special meeting of the Board of Trustees for June 2nd, 2025. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Anaya. Seeing there's no
I'm off somehow.
dialogue, please vote.
We're going to be waiting. He has to log back.
Oh, that's okay.
There we go. One second.
Just join the meeting.
What's that?
Just join the meeting. Right there to your right.
Yeah, no.
Right there, now go join.
That's what I tried to do.
Oh, I have to log in. Yeah.
Oh, I'm already logged in. Thank you. There it is. Thanks, sir.
On the vote being taken, the vote was 4 in favor and 1 absent. And this meeting is adjourned at 4:44.